You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Fezcast, coming to you on Wednesday morning, though we're recording Monday evening, and I am joined for this edition by Barry and Alex. And Alex, I saw you at the game on Sunday, fairly enjoyable game, which we're going to talk about in the second half. A really good game, really enjoyed that. And Barry, you seen a bit of the rugby over the weekend?
Yep, I spent most of the weekend in front of the television, to my other half's disappointment, watching endless games of rugby. In fact, at one point, I felt sorry for both her and the US, and we turned off the second half of the Scotland game, but never mind.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a cricket score there, with a good opening partnership of 85 for the Scottish there. But we'll gloss over that. There wasn't a lot of Saracens involvement in that one. Before we move on, though, just wanted to say a quick good wishes to Duncan, on particularly Duncan's grandson, because he saw Duncan yesterday, didn't we, Alex, at the game, but he's had a bit of a time with his grandson. He got rushed into hospital over the weekend, so we send all our best to Duncan's grandson in particular, but Duncan and his family, from everybody on the Fezcast. But, Alex, first up, international rugby. Shall we do that one over the weekend? And we mentioned Scotland giving the Yanks a bit of a spanking, shall we say. Best gloss over that one for the USA point of view. I'm not sure how much the Scottish would have got out of it either. It seemed to be a bit of a bun fight, really. Ireland, I should thought, pretty average against New Zealand. I don't know if you saw that game on Saturday evening, but I just don't know. I mean, they seem to have gone slightly backwards, Ireland, and New Zealand's a bit of a slow start, but they really did come into it. And is it Wallace City who potentially could come to us as a number 8? He looks a bit good, doesn't he, Alex?
There were some promising things about Ireland, but they just never really kind of got going. And ultimately, I think they've come away and gone, that was a disappointing thing. We should have kind of put up more of a fight than we did.
Yeah. And I mean, the red card, Barry, or the 20-minute red card for Tab Ben, I mean, there's a lot of Irish people going, well, it was never a red card. There's a lot of other people saying it was never a card. There was head contact. He never got low. Yeah, it might be an accident, but head contact, it's got to be a red, hasn't it? Especially if we're pretending to be concerned about rugby players and their health going on in the future.
He's very unfortunate. He didn't intend for it to happen. And it really, in old-fashioned terms, it was a rugby collision. But if you don't make any attempt to wrap and you are that upright, you're always going to go through the referee's always going to work his way through the protocols. Basically, he was never legal, so there's not going to be any mitigation applied to it. So live, I thought it was red, and I haven't really changed my mind since then.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, it's an unlucky one. But, you know, if you don't want to get sent off for headshots, go low and get yourself your technique sorted out. And I'm sure they'll take that into account when he goes to his disciplinary. It'll probably be a bit one like the Luke Cowan-Dickey one the other week against us, isn't it? They'll turn around and say, well, fair enough. It's one of them. Red cards, enough punishment on the day, and that'll be it. Anyway, let's move on to England versus Australia. And on the strength of it, I think, Barry, job well done, wasn't it? I mean, Australia, I think the scoreline flattered Australia. They were more than 18 points worse off than us. And I mean, they're trying the first half came from basically Harry Potter having a magical 5 minutes, as Austin Healey was keen to get the Hogwarts references into commentary. So I don't think England were ever in too much trouble, were they?
No, not really. I mean, Potter aside, you sort of, I suppose Suolihi had a decent game for them as well, but they weren't really as good as we possibly expected them to be. I know they're missing a few because obviously the game was outside the international window, so they're missing a few of their players who are involved with other clubs and what have you. But yeah, we left a few points out there first half, and I was a little bit unimpressed at half time, but second half we just came out and they never really had a look in until the very, very last couple of plays of the game, and even then they weren't really seriously knocking on the door, I don't think.
No. Well, let's have a quick discussion about the Saracens players who were involved in it, Alex. And first off, Maro Itoje. I mean, I think he's laying down claim to be the best captain, let alone second row or player in the world at the moment. But as a captain, he's elevated the responsibility, particularly in an international shirt.
You know, Lions captain over the summer, he's come back and kind of just brought whatever he's learned there into both county Saracens and now England. And I think that's what England need going forward, is that kind of direction and leadership, you know, going into a cup. We need to know who our captain, who our leadership group is, if we want to have a chance at, you know, really competing at the World Cup.
The way that he managed the referee, Barry, was exemplary. I mean, there's been a bit of well, I mean, I say, unlike the Australians to whinge at all, is it really? I mean, we spent most of the summer listening to them whine like a jumbo jet engine. But Joe Smith was unhappy that England had pointed out that Australia enter rucks illegally. Well, they had the evidence. The referee saw it, and the referee, the Georgian lad's an exceptionally good referee, and he spotted them side entry, and pinged them for it. And whether Schmidt and the Australians agree with his interpretation of it, that was his interpretation. They never got on side, whereas Maro Itoje managed that beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't really understand what Joe Schmidt's problem is. Every team speaks to the referee ahead of the game, particularly at international level, and they'll bring things up that they want the referee, that they'd like the referee to look at because it's something that they've spotted. It's actually an annoyance of mine that side entry doesn't seem to be penalised very much now in the game in general. It seems that they get away with an awful lot. I know they've changed the rules about through the gate, but still, you have to be somewhere in the right position, and clearly, often or not, it's exceptionally dodgy as to whether it's from the right side of the ruck. But yeah, I don't really know what they're complaining about. And at the end of the day, the referee penalised us for it once as well.
He did, yeah. I thought he was very fair, actually, wasn't he, Alex? He thought he had a really, really good game. There's a couple of things that if I was refereeing, might have refereed it differently, but then I wasn't refereeing it. He had the whistle, I didn't. And likewise, nobody else did they? And I thought, all we want is consistency. And I think we got that from the merry whistleblower.
Yeah, and I think if you're saying to referee, we want you to look at this on the other team, they're also going to look at it for your team. So you have to go in knowing things like, if you've said, we want you to look at side entry, that the rest are going to look at side entry on England as well. So I think, all in all, we kind of managed that really well and kind of almost used the referee to our advantage because we were kind of showing the right picture.
Exactly right. And I mean, that comes from the coaching, where Steve Borthwick is really, I think, finding his feet as an international coach now and has really answered an awful lot of critics, I think. And also, obviously, it comes from the leadership on the field that's led by Maro Itoje. Another leader on the field, Barry, is Jamie George. Now, Jamie, by his own very, very high standards, will probably say he didn't have his best game. And certainly, as much as this pains me to say, when Luke Cowan-Dickie came on, there was a little bit more accuracy, particularly around the lineouts. Jamie had overthrown a couple and missed his jump on one, I think. However, what Jamie George did give you around the park was 100% effort, wasn't it? And even when he was being shoved back by the big Aussie prop, I think it was, he stayed in the fight. And although he was going backwards, he still managed to present the ball back and continued the attacking play going, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it was noticeable that at scrum time they never really got on top of us, despite the fact they probably would have fancied their chances against our starting front row, but they never managed to do it. And yeah, Jamie's not quite the player he was in his pomp, but he's still more than capable of playing at international level, I think, for me.
Undoubtedly. So it's an interesting point you make there about the starting front row and the finishing front row. It's probably the one thing that Eddie Jones has brought to World Rugby that I quite like. And I mean, for me to say that is something else. But clearly having a front row that can start the game that will keep you in the game, but then to bring on Ellis Genge and Luke Cowan-Dickie and Will Stewart, that's a hell of a to use the current terminology, hell of a bomb squad. And I mean, that made a huge difference, didn't it? Ellis Genge coming on at 16 minutes is going to put the frighteners up most front rows in the world.
That's where you need depth in the squad, that you can say, we're not going to start off maybe first choice front row, but we know the people on the pitch are good enough to kind of do the job, so that when what we will see as our first team come off the bench, that actually we're in a place where we're not losing the game massively, where there's nothing that can be done about it. I think that's what Borthwick's done since he came in, is build the almost depth that we have now, that he can say, I can put my strongest players, so some of my strongest players on the bench, but I know that we're still going to win this.
When I talk about my coaching bête noire, as it were, of not having a plan B, plan C, or plan D, that by playing your star players, as it were, all right, star players, but your first choice players on the bench, if it is going wrong on 20 minutes, if you've got a coach who's got the balls to do it, he could turn around and say, well, okay, Ellis Genge, Will Stewart, Luke Cowan-Dickie, you're giving me 60 minutes now, and send them on early if they need to, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's not beyond the realms of their fitness that front row players can do 60 minutes. I mean, we've seen it often enough at Saracens with certain players. They're more than capable of going the whole game if they need to. So, yeah, you're right. If it's not working, it's better this way round, where you have perhaps on paper a slightly weaker front row, and you can change that if you're in trouble, rather than the other way around, where you start off strong, and if something goes wrong, if someone gets injured, you're then bringing on a replacement not quite at the same level, and then they've got to go the distance. So yeah, I mean, you can see the sense in it. At some point it's going to backfire on us, I suspect. I'd be interesting to see what happens when we get to the New Zealand game at the end of the autumn internationals.
Yeah, that would be a big one, won't it? Because I think, New Zealand are going to, and South Africa, obviously, as well. I mean, they're two big games to finish off with. However, we do need to talk about the man of the match, Alex. And Ben Earl, playing out of position. A lot of people say he is playing out of position. They believe he's an open side, but he's stuck his hand in the air before and said he prefers to play number 8. It's where he wants to play. Next season at Saracens, we're going to have a position open with Tom Willis going off to France. And I think Ben Earl stuck his hand in the air and said, here you are, I'm your starting number 8 for England. Got man of the match. I mean, I thought his interview afterwards where he pointed out that perhaps he shouldn't have got man of the match after butchering the unbutcherable. But I mean, that was the start of Harry Potter's magical 5 minutes, wasn't it, Alex? But Ben Earl had a phenomenally good game, and he's got a set of wheels on him for a back row player, hasn't he? I mean, Sam Underhill taking that pass off of Roebuck's, catching Mitchell's box kick for Ben Earl's try, and realising that Ben Earl had the gas and he didn't. Very wise out. It's one pace, giving the ball. And he went away like a winger would in those situations, didn't he?
I think he was surprised himself by scoring the try. He kept looking around thinking, oh, someone's going to catch me. And then they didn't. But I think, if he prefers playing 8, then why not start him at, if he likes that, then people are generally going to be better in positions they like, rather than just saying, and, obviously if Borthwick wants him to start open side, then he'll start there like anyone would. But I think that, if you have that versatility to play multiple positions, that gives you a better skill set and is ultimately going to help you improve.
It's also been pointed out by others far more knowledgeable than me that Ben Earl's got all the attributes of playing at centre as well.
There was talk beforehand that Henry Pollock had been used in training on the wing and potentially could cover the wing. And if you looked at the pace that he showed when he scored his try, there are a lot of players around there that have a versatility that's adding to the sum of the parts. That means that against Fiji, do you see Ben Earl starting at 7 and Henry Pollock getting a start at 8? Because, Henry Pollock came on, and yeah, fair dues, he's a cocky so-and-so, as we said beforehand. And I'm looking forward to what happens when Eben Estebev gets off it, because we'll find out what sort of man Henry Pollock is. But to have that talent, the one-handed pickup, and it was just absolute genius. And it does look good for England, particularly in the back row, that you've got Tom Curry comes off the bench and marmalises the young Aussie number 10. He's probably waking up this morning and in cold sweats and seeing Tom Curry running at him. But, and then you look at the players who don't get in the side, back row we got a profusion of talents. And I mean, perhaps that's why Tom Willis is off to France, because he couldn't be guaranteed that starting place. And I mean, you got the likes of Alex Dombrand, who I don't think of as an international player, but he's been doing good things at Quins this season, and he can't even get anywhere near the team. I mean, it's a bountiful amount of joy we have there, isn't it, Barry?
People have been talking about Cunningham South and whether he's staying at Quins or whether he's going to Sale. I mean, we've been mentioned, but obviously it's because we're looking for another back rower. But yeah, you're right. There's an awful lot of choices in the back row for Saracens and England, and it can only be good. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Nathan Mitchell yet either.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen that as well, because the England A squad has been picked for the teams to play against the New Zealand development side, the New Zealand All Blacks 15, that played against Nax Malins and the Barbarians on the weekend and got a good victory there. But yeah, Noah Kalori's in there, Nathan Michelot. There's a few Saracens players in that, so which is good to see. Mark Mapletop knows where the Stone X is, obviously.
Yeah, it's a familiar path for him, but that looks like a pretty strong England A squad. I've got to say, I've got it in front of me, and there's a lot of players there who wouldn't look out of place at the playing for the full England team, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, Hassel, Collins, Radwan, people have been talking about them coming in, and I mean, yeah, it's just phenomenal amount of talent that England have, and I think now Borthwick's got these players. This Six Nations coming after these autumn internationals. I mean, obviously we'll see what happens with the autumn internationals, Alex, but things are looking really rosy for England at the moment, aren't they?
Obviously, the autumn internationals will have an impact on World Cup draw, but then I think, it's almost the start of the building block. Like, we've had that time after World Cup. Borthwick's had enough time to settle in. So actually, this is showing where he wants to go with the team, where we might be in a couple of years' time.
Lots to look forward to there. Right, well, before we move on to the women, though, just a quick bit of Paris news, as it were, to get through. And Cam Hutchinson is off and back up to the northeast, back to Newcastle. Say well done to Cam on his time with us. It was very short, but an invaluable addition to that squad on that short-term basis, Barry. And, you can't say anything but thank you to Cam for all his efforts.
Yeah, we needed cover in the centres, and he provided it. And hopefully now that we've not kept him, that doesn't that bodes well for our players coming back. But yeah, he never let us down. He did a job, and he didn't look out of place with us. And I'm sure he'll go well back at Newcastle.
Indeed, he will. Yeah. So thank you there to Cam. Now, shall we take a break there, and then we'll come back and discuss the game at the Stonex yesterday, which was a fantastic game of rugby.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody, and welcome to our section about the Saracens women versus Quins yesterday at the Stonex. You and I were there, Alex, weren't we? Barry, I assume you watched on the telly box. We wanted a reaction, didn't we, Alex, after the week before against Gloucester Hartpury? And I think we got that reaction in spades. I mean, it was an unusual game. I mean, the first thing that happened was Quins kicked off and kicked it dead. And it does seem to, their game seemed to unravel from that point. But it was also a case of we put our foot on their throat and didn't take it off for quite some time.
We started really fast, and that almost kind of Quins had no response. And yes, they got a couple of tries, but even though tries, it seemed like they were fighting really hard for them, and they just didn't have a response to almost anything we did. And, there definitely was stuff we need to work on. There was stuff that didn't work, but I think considering we almost had lost by the same amount to Gloucester Hartbury last week, the fact we can come back here and put that performance on and say, no, we are a strong side. We are contenders for that trophy come the end of the season. I think that's really promising.
Now, before we get into the real meat of the game, I'm going to have a whinge now, Alex, because I don't know what your experiences were like, but it was a fabulous crowd. That was the main thing. It was wonderful to see at a women's game, the whole of that stand pretty much full. It was a fantastic sight. It's the fastest selling women's game at the StoneX ever. And yet it doesn't appear that anybody's told the concessions, certainly inside underneath the stand, because they had about 3 kids working, and there were, as kickoff was 30 seconds away, there were still people inside queuing up for their pie and chips and pint. Sort of like it got a little, I was a bit concerned that did someone take their eye off the ball there? And I don't know whose fault that is, and I hope that it's a learning point for future, because if you're going to grow the game, what you need to do is make sure that experience, not just what goes on the field, but off the field, supports how you want to grow the game, Alex.
I spent most of my time in the queue for Braid Maidens to get a Georgia Evans bow, but they knew it was going to be a big crowd. Like, we've seen that saying, like, okay, we're going to get probably over 3,000 people here. So I think it's just, the awareness from the club to say we need to make sure that the concessions, the merchandise, all of that is ready to take that, rather than saying, oh, it's like a normal game. They had the Oasis open, which was really good because they don't normally have that open. But just saying, if this is the crowd we're expecting, this is what we need to put on so that we can make more money out of it, essentially, that they can then invest back into the game.
Yeah, I think actually having the Oasis open is a huge thing as well. And I think for future games, they need to make a point of it, that we will open the Oasis, because that will drag people in as well. I mean, not just about going to the game, is it, Barry? It's the whole experience. And if you can get decent food there, and the food isn't just limited to what they do inside, and they do have the pizza place, and they do have the outside bar and everything like that, surely that's going to drag people in, and it's a case of speculating to accumulate, and maybe a couple of times it might not make as much as you want, or it may even be a loss leader or whatever, but somebody really, should be biting that bullet, shouldn't they, Barry?
Yeah, obviously we don't know how it works with the outside concessions. I mean, a lot of them, I suspect they pay Saracens an amount of money and then they turn up and open, and it's probably a little bit. I'm going to give them a little bit of a break, because it's that they've got one game in the middle of a couple of fallow weeks, so it'll be difficult to buy in stuff that's perishable, and what do they do with it if they don't sell it? So. Yeah, I mean, it is all about the day out. They would have known that crowd was coming, and perhaps they could have done a little bit more, but sometimes it's tricky for them to know how to pitch it and how to do it. But I think in general, we need to concentrate, not just at Saracens. I think we need to give the women's game a bit more of a leg up. I mean, watching on the television yesterday, the quality of the refereeing was not good. And it's something I noticed in the Women's World Cup as well. Some of the referees just aren't at the required level for me, and I don't want to be having a go at them, because it's just the way it is. But we need better coverage, we need better officiating, and we need better support for the women's game across the board, I think.
That's funny you say that about the refereeing, because I didn't think the refereeing was so bad yesterday. I mean, I've certainly seen worse, and it can't have been that bad, because I didn't give too much advice to them from the sidelines, because when you go to the women's game, you can stand down by the side and walk to one end to the other. I mean, the poor old flag boy often gets a bit of advice from me, all in the best possible situation. I mean, it's one of those things. You're right. It's the whole thing that needs to be brought up, and hopefully on the back of the Women's World Cup, on the back of what we hope will be a successful PWR with attendances and television figures going up as well, then, hopefully that'll make those moves. Shall we talk about the players, though? And in particular, I want to pick out 3 players who are best described, as Duncan described them on our WhatsApp group this morning, as the Saranadians I think that's how we pronounce it. But basically, Canadians and Saracens mixed up. Now, obviously, the first one, World Player of the Year, Sophie de Goody, was down on the team sheet, but presumably she's picked up a bit of a knock because she was in the crowd watching the game. But 3 Canadian players really impressed me on the weekend, Alex. 2 new signings and 1 player who's been at us for a little while. First off, we'll go with the player's been with us a while. Alicia Corrigan, I mean, she just had gas to burn, didn't she? And she absolutely enjoyed herself hugely. I mean, she scored a couple of tries, didn't she? And she could have got 5 or 6 quite easily, couldn't she?
She's come off a really good World Cup for her, and she just seems to kind of be continuing that at Saracens. And I think she's working well with Jess, which is really good, because sometimes you see, like, when they come back from their country, they don't necessarily work that well together. But I think they've clearly found their stride, and she's doing really well, and hopefully that will continue.
Indeed. Now, the 2 players who've come to us, I'm going to mention the real superstar, really did drive the team forward. And we were talking about it last week when it was announced that Olivia Apps was coming and how that would affect the likes of Tori Sellers, and obviously Olivia Apps is out for a while, Barry, whatever. Tori's done really great when she's been put under that pressure as being the first choice scrum half. But Olivia Apps has come in and she's just elevated that position to a different place, hasn't she? Her speed of delivery and accuracy of delivery, it was just different class. It was world class.
She had a great game. It was really noticeable as well how much organising she was doing around it. She had the confidence to tell people where to go, to try and shape the direction of the attacks. And yeah, you're right. The speed and the accuracy was absolutely brilliant, and what a great debut for her.
Well, indeed, and this is a very good point that Barry's made there. The fact that she was organising, that she was shoving her pack around the pitch, she was telling, and you're looking at players like Zoe Harrison, Marley Packer, Poppy Cleal, big names, and she's been there, a week and a half? She's signed, she's had a few training sessions, her first start, and it's just the class of the girl is that she's got that ability, that confidence, maybe even a touch of cockiness to be able to stamp her authority on a new team so rapidly. For some players, it just doesn't happen for a little while, does it?
Yeah, and I was wondering when Sophie de Goody put out whether that would affect things. So obviously they work quite closely together at Canada. So I was like, that could have an impact on how we play our game. But I think she worked really well with Zoe Harrison. She was organising our attack and our defence. And I think she looked really promising. And, Tori Sellers also pulled out. Hopefully, that's not serious. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how much she takes on over the next couple of months.
Obviously, with Sarah McKenna coming on as the reserve scrum half, I mean, you can imagine that she's going to get an awful lot of work and honour. But I think she's got the ability to do that in spades. Now, the other player, and for me, Marley Packer got player of the match, I think, from the TV team. And you can understand why Marley gets it. I mean, she never gives less than 100%, does she? And she's also, she's a name, as it were. And I often think that when they pick players of the match, what they pick are the players they want to interview after the game because they can offer something there. But for me, new signing, young player, come to us from Leicester Tigers, Canadian again, Julia Omakwali. I think that's how you pronounce the surname. I apologise if it isn't. But she was outstanding on the blind side, Barry. Absolutely everywhere. I mean, she runs like a winger. She leaps like Maro Itoje in the line out. She was making tackles and after tackles. And what I think was very impressive, I think there was one tackle she made in on, it might have been Ellie Kildun, but it was one of the Quins backs players where she tracks them, didn't throw herself into it because it's very easy to get overexcited and do a Rosie Gallagher when Ellie Kildun's got to try and push the player. But she just timed a tackle to absolute perfection by having some patience. But Julia had an outstanding game for me. I just thought she was all court. Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I thought as a whole, our entire pack was brilliant. The back row were the real engine of that, and she was the outstanding player in that back row. But I mean, obviously, to go back to missing Sophie de Goody, it's not so bad where you can turn around and give the ball to a Poppy Clear or a Marley Packer, and Poppy will feel really hard done by with that yellow card as well, because it was really tight as to whether the Quins 9, Lucy Packer, I think it was, wasn't it, picked the ball up or not, and whether it was there to be played. So she'll feel a bit hard done by with that. But yeah, Julia, again, for another player making her first start at the StoneX, brilliant debut, and I'm sure there'll be much more to come from her.
We'll mention Poppy Clearland discipline in a minute, Alex, but before we do that, I want to talk about the really big decision that Alex Osterbury has made, and it's an interesting one, and I think it's one that sparked a bit more fire in Marley Packer's belly, but the captaincy was handed over to Zoe Harrison, and I think Zoe did really well in a normal, quiet, efficient way, but she seemed to take on the responsibility and it lifted her. What are your thoughts on, one, why Alex Osterbury's made that choice, and two, how both Marley and Zoe reacted to the decision that was made?
Yeah, and I think last week with the Gloss Heart game as well, she was named as captain on team sheet and then didn't seem to do much on the field. So it was good to see Zoe kind of step up and kind of talk to the referee, take on that co-captaincy position alongside May Campbell. But I think for Marley, I guess it's probably a little thing thinking he needs to widen his leadership group, because actually Lottie hasn't played the last couple of games. And if we think Marley could be retiring, end of the season and the next couple of seasons, then actually we need to look at who's going to take over that captaincy role. So I think he's just trying out his options. But I think Marley's responded really well. And we know after she lost the England captaincy, we then went and beat Leicester by 100 points. And she was still captain at Saracen. So I think it almost has just spurred her on to prove herself and say, okay, I'm not captain anymore, but I'm still going to put out performances that you would expect to me a couple of years ago every week and show you that I still deserve this spot on the team.
Yeah, I think that's the character of Marley, isn't it, Barry? That she'll take the knockdowns and she almost takes them as a personal affront, but reacts to it in the right way. That you say, yeah, you've written me off time and time again. I'm going to prove you wrong and stick two fingers up at you almost, which I think Alex Osterbury's very clever in recognising that and knows that's how he's going to get the best out of Marley now.
She played the game with a smile on her face, but I don't know if you picked this up at the live at the StoneX, but she was also refereeing the game, because there was one point where we held up the Quins ball carrier in the second half, and you could clearly hear on the referee's mic on the telly Marley calling maul and then just waiting for it to go to ground before we got the turnover.
I think actually, because my wife watched it on, Sharon watched it at home, and I think Marley might have said a few more Anglo-Saxon invectives around the fact that it was a ball, because I think the commentary team spent most of the second half apologising, didn't they?
Yeah, normally they say apologies for any bad language that you may have picked up. They just said, sorry, that was Marley.
Yeah, you can take the girl out the plumber, but you can't take the plumber out the girl, can you? Sort of thing, but there you go. The other thing, I suppose, Alex, is there any other players you feel you need to mention? I'd like to mention Donna Rose, because I thought Donna had a really good game. But is there any other players that you think really stood out?
Sydney Gregson and Beth Blacklock had a good game. It's not a centre combination we've seen in a while, but I think they've, obviously Sophie Bridge and Emma Hardy did a great job during the Cup campaign, and they've kind of come back from international. Sydney's obviously been there, come back from injury. Beth's come back from internationals. And I think they really worked today. And I think, yesterday, and I think that just helped kind of the whole attack flow. Whereas we've seen in the past where the centre pairing hasn't been quite right, because we're trying to maybe force players into positions they don't really play at. And it's just kind of meant it's all a bit disjointed. So I think that just helped the attack go smoother.
Yeah, I thought Sydney was exceptionally good. She made the right decisions at the right time, when to take the challenge on and when to distribute. And I think that made a huge difference. And certainly that first 20 minutes when we went away from them, Barry, that was one of the key things, is making the right decisions at the right time.
Yeah, Sydney had a great game. I mean, you could almost pick anyone out of our side and say they had a good game. I'm going to give a special mention to Gemma Jo Linkins, who obviously playing opposite Ellie Kildunn, who is a player of Galactico standard. To not be overawed by that and to stamp her own mark on the game, I felt was very good.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I suppose that's something you could say is that Ellie Kildunn, she wants to win medals, she wants to win trophies. And, you'd ask the question whether Quins are the right team to provide that at the moment, Alex. I don't think they potentially are. So does she look to come somewhere? And in which case, Saracens would be a place that she would look at. So players like Gemma Jo have to stick their hand in the air and say, no, you're not going to just come here and walk into our team potentially. You've got to get past me. And, why are Saracens going to look at a player like you when I'm playing at the level I'm playing at?
Yeah, and I think Ellie's unlikely to walk away from Quins unless she can go into another team and say, I want to start, because Quins give that to her. And they do tend to base a lot of their attack and their play around her. When we played them at the Stoop last season, they almost needed her to try to get them going and to get the fans going as well. But I do think that Quins just maybe don't quite have that yet. Obviously, they've gone through a lot of change in the last years, were really successful, and then kind of just dipped out of that top two kind of spots. But I do think that it's probably not going to be the team that's, really winning championships and whatever. So it'd be interesting to see whether players like Ellie Kildunn and Lisa Packer look to go elsewhere, where they can actually really start putting their hand up and say, we want to compete for the title.
Yeah, a very good point you make there, and I totally agree with you. And then you've also as well got a player like Abby Dow who's without a club at the moment, isn't it? So there's a fair bit of back free talent around. So when players like Gemma Jo do stick their hand in the air, obviously they use it as an impetus, and well done to them. Now, Barry, you did mention Poppy Cleall's yellow, and I suppose one thing about the game is, and I mean, you've seen it from a different perspective from us, watching it on the television. Again, I felt the referee wasn't so bad, and it was anything else. It was at least consistent, I felt. But Poppy Cleall, I thought it was a little bit cynical, to be perfectly honest with you, Poppy. I think she knew what she was doing, and it was very much taking one for the team, and it's something that Poppy did well in that situation and took that one for the team. And Poppy has done that on more than one occasion. What I will say, though, on the back of that, Barry, is the 10 minutes following that is as good a reaction to a yellow card as I think I've seen from any team over the last couple of seasons in men and women's games, because Saracens used it as an impetus. Zoe and Beth put us in the right places with some excellent kicking, got us down so that Quins had to go from distance to exploit the extra player that they had on the pitch. And then we went out and scored our own try as well. So I think we actually won, or at least drew, that 10-minute period when we were down to 14 players. And that's exemplary play. That's all you can wish for in those situations, can't you, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the case that they used to say a yellow card in rugby is about a 10-point deficit normally, or that was the sort of average that you'd concede when down to 14 players. But it's not the case anymore. And as you say, we managed that 10-minute spell so well, and perhaps Quins would be looking at themselves saying, well, maybe we should have tried to keep hold of the ball a little bit more and not got involved in a little bit of a kick fest when Saracens were down to 14. But we managed it so well and just kept them. We kept them at arm's length. If it had been a boxing match, the referee would probably have called it off at halftime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, aren't you? I mean, it was a big old turnaround there, and credit to the Saracens women for the way that they reacted there. Next up, though, Alex, is Bristol, and you're going down there, aren't you, for that?
Yeah.
Bristol are coming off of a massive win against Leicester, aren't they? They went to Leicester, and again, 74 without loss. That's disappointing for Leicester, number one, but it looks like Bristol have got some firepower and have got some confidence going into that game. I mean, how do you see next week's game going?
Obviously, we're a stronger side than Leicester, but I think Bristol are going to come out of that really confident and say, if we can do it at Leicester, we can beat Saracens. But equally, we'll come out of the Harlequin game and go, well, if we can kind of take control and be that dominant over Harlequins, we can beat Bristol. So I think it's almost a matter of who has more willpower. Both teams have the players, they have the skill set to beat the other. So it's just who takes control of the game, thinks about it critically, uses whatever weather conditions to their advantage. So I think I'm not necessarily going, we need to win that we at least get a bonus point out of it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point you make there. And I think it's similar to what happens with the men's rugby, isn't it? The men's rugby over to Newcastle, you don't go away and expect to win games, Barry. You look at what you can manage out of it. In the women's game, there's a few games where you go away and you think, well, okay, if you were to offer me a bonus point at the start of the game, you'd probably take it. And this is probably one of those, isn't it? And then, you never know what happens on the day. If you get a good start, like we did on Sunday at the StoneX, who knows what might happen.
Trailfinders and Leicester apart, it's the home advantage is going to be a big thing this season, I think, and we might just have to settle for what we've got there. But there's no reason we can't take Sunday's performance with us into the game, and if we can just improve our accuracy just a little bit, just a couple of percent, and and not drop a couple of passes and not perhaps give the ball away so easily at times, we will be there or thereabouts, I think, on the weekend.
Indeed. And you're going, Alex, so we'll get a good report next week from that one. Just before we go, just wanted to mention as well, a player retiring on the weekend, announced her retirement on Sunday. David Loxham put a good post up about her and then mentioned it to me. But Hannah Chopper Casey, Irish international, 120 appearances for Saracens. But her work with the fire service has taken over a little bit more. And she's got an age now, 37, where she's decided to hang up her rugby boots and concentrate on her career. But we've got to say, well done to Hannah for a great career with Saracens and Ireland.
It was good for her, for her to say, okay, I'll stick around for the cup campaign, in case there's injuries or in case you need me. And then actually, she knows she's not going to probably get into the team. So she may as well say, okay, I'm going to retire now. And then, as you say, go off and do her work for the fire service.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we wish her, like we did with Cam Hutchinson earlier on, Barry, we wish her all the best of luck in the future and whatever that comes her way. And perhaps maybe she's somebody we could get on to talk about life after rugby, and particularly in the fire service, Barry.
Obviously, she'll always be welcome at the StoneX, and I'm sure we'll see her around on match days as well.
Indeed. Well, Alex, Barry, thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for listening in to this week's edition of the Fezcast. We'll be back next week, the 12th of November, with reaction to the internationals of the weekend and how Saracens players go in that. And of course, the big match down in Bear Country against Bristol women for Saracens women. But until then, we'll say thank you everybody for listening in, and we'll see you next week. Ta-ra!
This is the Fezcast.